Okay, so again, welcome to, I guess, technically the first session of the second day of our forum. I'd like to welcome you all again. I think you just heard the disclaimer a little bit ago, so I won't read that to you again, but I would like to thank again Robert and our other speakers. I know they've all taken time out of their busy day to share their experiences with all of us as they work to meet the conditions of the Pennsylvania MS4 permit. So we appreciate them providing this learning opportunity for their fellow permittees and local decision makers. So with that, we'll remind you again, if you have questions through the presentation, you can put those in the chat. We'll try to get to those as we go. If not, then we'll definitely get to them in the end. Feel free to drop a thumbs up or a heart. What else do we have? Looks like we got some clapping hands, a big smile, any of those things, just to know, so Robert knows that we're here and with him as he's presenting. All of that helps a little bit. And then at the end, we should have a little bit of time for questions. We can either use the chat or at that point at the end, if you wanted to come off mute and ask Robert a question directly, I think we should have time for that. So again, thank you, Robert, and take it away.
Well, thank you all for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about how PennVest can facilitate projects and assist communities in implementing their MS4. As you'll see here in the slideshow that I have up, I'll just give you a little background about PennVest. Some people are familiar with us, some people aren't. Essentially, we've been around since 1988. We were created as an authority to serve as a state revolving fund. Essentially, what that means is as we loan money out at low interest rates, typically between 1% to 2%, as those principal and interest is paid back, the fund grows a little bit, and then we fund additional clean water projects. Traditionally, the projects that we were funding when the agency was created dealt primarily with wastewater and drinking water projects. And you'll see here in the slide that those are the bulk of our projects. However, as time has gone on, and for the most part, wastewater and drinking water facilities have come into compliance, the program has really expanded over the last so many years to start addressing MS4, stormwater, non-point source, brownfields, green infrastructure, on-lot systems, and really kind of getting at those next tier environmental issues when it comes to clean water. So as you can see, being around for 33 years, we're at that $9.8 billion amount. We're originally created with the anticipation of only being around for about 20 years at about $2 billion. And you can see how that revolving nature of the fund has really allowed it to perpetuate and continue to provide assistance. And we look forward to being able to provide that assistance into the future. Currently, right now, we're at about a $700 million annual budget. That annual budget, we anticipate having similar dollars available for the foreseeable future. So as you can see, we have a really healthy fund right now. Anticipate funds being available, whether it be for drinking water, wastewater, or today's topic, MS4. And we know a lot of folks are going to be are looking to implement their pollution reduction plans. And now's the right time to be looking for financing. Let me see if I can, there we go. A lot of people tend to think we're just a municipal lending entity. That's not the case. You can see here from this slide that we can fund both privates and municipals, public and privates, for all of our eligible categories. So please know that even if it's there's a need in a community that might deal on a private parcel or a commercial parcel, those entities can come to us directly for financing and really access our funding to improve clean water, improve water to clean water within communities. Some of the new and latest items that we have as far as our lending programs is our small projects. We meet 4 times a year and take applications 4 times a year through our traditional program. One thing that we've expanded is this small projects program, where really what that means is, let's say you have a project that is $500,000 or less, or it's $1 million less, but you're only seeking up to $500,000 from PennVest. We'll take rolling applications at any point in time. And once the application's complete, we're really targeting to have an approval in place within 2 weeks of receiving an complete application. So we're really trying to expedite those smaller projects. Traditionally, PennVest is funding about $2-3 million projects. Sometimes we'll get into the $10-15 million range. And we really noticed that the projects we were missing were the high dollar value projects as well as the low dollar value projects. So we expanded our programs to include this. But the nice thing about this small projects program is not only just the rolling application and the 2-week turnaround goal is that what's the terms are going to be with the funding source. So for our small projects, you don't need to do Davis-Bacon wage rates, American Iron and Steel, uniform environmental review requirements. Essentially, these are the federal requirements that are traditionally attached to the federal dollars we receive. So you'll know that we're using state source funding here to eliminate the need for those additional requirements, which help keep the costs down for projects. And you'll see that the terms that do apply is obviously the Pennsylvania Steel Products Procurement Act or equal, as well as our cost-effective requirements. So we're really excited about this program. We're starting to see a lot of folks start to take advantage of it. This funding program is really low interest loan monies only, which interest rates at county cap rates right now are between 1% and 2%, and we'll be somewhere in between there. If you want to be eligible for grant dollars in the event you have a hardship situation, you can come in through our traditional program. Just because your project is a smaller dollar value doesn't necessarily mean you have to use this program. You can still come into our traditional program and to pursue any grant dollars that we may have available. Another one of our programs is what we're calling programmatic financing. A lot of communities will have capital improvement projects where they want to do so much money worth of infrastructure. And this is going to be ideal for MS4 programs where you might want to be doing projects each year for, say, 3 years. And you can come in and get that funding all up front and know that those dollars are going to be in place, very similar to if you would go out to the bond market and get a bond to do infrastructure projects for a capital improvement plan. And we mirror it very closely to that. So you can get that award up front, know that money's going to be there. And then as you're implementing the project, we do mini settlements and you can access that additional funding for each phase of the project as part of a capital improvement project. Another new program we have is what's called a sub-level revolving loan program, which is where we'll provide seed money to a community, a government entity, it might be a regional planning commission, to start seeding and operating their own local state, not state revolving fund, but local revolving fund. So we would provide that seed money and you could set up criteria. This would be ideal for, let's say you're doing small projects where you're helping local small businesses, commercial entities. It could be farmers, agriculture within a community where you're operating a local revolving loan fund. All we have to get back at PennVest is 1%. That's required by statute, but you can charge a fee on top of that, 1%. Of principal and interest, and really operate a local revolving loan fund to really target and address those local issues that are important to the community. Our traditional program, we do meet 4 times a year. You can see from this slide, it's basically about quarterly, and each year the dates might change a day or two, but it's pretty much in line with this. We do have an application cutoff, which is about 2 months before our board meeting, and that gives us time to review applications, process them, and get input from other entities. All of this information is on our website. I would encourage you to access our website. We are a completely electronic agency and organization. All applications are done through our portal as well as funds disbursement, settlement, and we found it to be a very positive, streamlined application process, disbursement process, and closeout process, and has really expedited and allowed us to process applications in a more timely fashion. We do have project specialists that serve different regions within or areas within the Commonwealth. They're really the frontline folks for PennVest that are going to be fostering projects, answering your questions, working with you through the application process, helping you through the settlement process, even through construction and closeout of a project. If you're thinking about a project, it's never too early to call and engage one of our project specialists. Their contact information is also on our website, and they're really there to do anything and everything they can to facilitate a project and really help you with achieving your clean water goals locally. You can also sign up on our webpage for email updates, as well as follow us on Facebook. We tend to post projects on there that are being completed to highlight what the fund can do, what other communities are doing. You might see projects that are similar to what you want to do, and might be able to talk to an adjacent community about successes and things you may want to consider. One thing I will say with PennVest is we are primarily a low interest loan program. We fully understand and appreciate communities or entities always looking for grant dollars, but the reality is there's just never enough grant dollars to go around. Still encourage folks to pursue those grant dollars. You can use PennVest as a matching source, but one thing I always like to highlight is that even though we do have grant dollars and it is limited, the real success of the fund is that 1 to 2% low interest loan. Holding off a project, waiting for grant dollars to come available, or not moving on a project, waiting for grant dollars. Just my experience, just my personal experience, projects tend to escalate in costs. The longer you wait, waiting for those grant dollars, you might end up costing more in the long run than as if you just implemented it and got the benefits of that project for your community through a 1% low interest loan. So the other thing I want to point out is it's very important, especially in today's environment. Obviously, folks are following very closely the amount of funds that are becoming available through the American Recovery Plan, as well as potential additional infrastructure bills from the federal government. And I would encourage communities that if you're thinking about projects that you really want to be in a position to be construction ready. Typically, when funds become available, you're going to want to have your permits, you're going to want to have your environmental clearances, you're going to want to be able to act when and if funds become available. So I would encourage you not to wait for funds to be available to start a process, or start the planning, start the designing of a project. I'd really encourage you to move as forward thinking as possible to get those projects ready so that when and if those additional funds become available, you're ready to go. Construction ready is always a key word when it comes to infrastructure. And those that are in a position of being construction ready are typically in the position where they can most readily or be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they do come available. One thing I will say, though, is with the infrastructure dollars, just a little bit that I'm hearing that through the grapevines, we don't know what the end result is going to be. But as those funds come available, there's the possibility that you might need matching funds to access those grant dollars. And PennVest is ideal to use as match funds. So if you're pursuing grant funds, whether it be through the Commonwealth Financing Authority, we'll wait to see what comes of the American Recovery Plan, the infrastructure plan. But if you need to seek matching funds, PennVest is very capable and able to work with other funding sources and can be that source of matching funds to implement your projects. So just know that we're there and able to help with that too. So again, the biggest message I can convey, whether you're using PennVest funds or pursuing other funding sources, is in the most recent environment. It's going to be really important for communities to be construction ready or to be ready to go or as far along in the process so that you're in the best situation to take advantage of those dollars. And PennVest is here to help you with that matching source if that's needed. But again, I can also say that you don't necessarily have to wait either on what's going to come of those funds, because in the long run, the longer the project takes, the more it's going to cost, and the longer it's going to be before those within the community can get the benefit of the clean water and the results of that project. So really, that's about, it's kind of short and sweet with us here at PennVest. I'll be more than happy to take any questions that folks might have regarding PennVest, whether it be involving MS4, whether it be something else, how our fundings work, how our applications work. So really, I'll be happy to take any questions at this point in time.
All right, thank you, Robert. There was one came in pretty early. It says, is there an example of a community that combined a sewage, CSO, and MS4 problem with PennVest?
Yes, actually, we have a perfect example of that in Dauphin County. The Capital Region Water Authority actually implemented green infrastructure projects within their community to manage the stormwater. And what they did is they combined it to obtain co-benefits. If you were part of the earlier discussion, it was discussed on how to get those additional co-benefits. But essentially what they're doing is they're creating green infrastructure space within communities that might traditionally not have had that green infrastructure, or so they're basically putting in green parks, those types of things within distressed areas of the community to green, increase the value, increase the quality of life of living within those sections of the community, as well as getting that clean water benefit for rainwater detention, infiltration, to keep it out of the combined sewers. So they actually, Capital Region, did a programmatic financing project with us. It is programmatic financing, and they're going to be implementing that over the next 3 years to manage the stormwater, get the co-benefits of the green infrastructure, and making their community more resilient, as well as reducing the inflow into the combined sewer system to reduce their CSO. So that's a perfect example of one that we have going right now. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Is that, Bernard, is that what you were looking for? All right. Okay. So I said we can still, you have plenty of time for questions. You can put those into the chat. Or I think at this point, if you'd like to raise your hand, you're welcome to come off mute and ask Robert a question directly.
And I'll point out one thing I forgot to mention while people are thinking of questions is the EPA does have what's called an OSG grant. It's an overflow stormwater grant that's administered by EPA, that's accessible through the state. We at PennVest for the state have access that. I think it's about $2.3 million this year, and that's already being allocated for projects. But we're anticipating potentially in the future, at least the preliminary read we're getting from EPA is that might be a grant source that comes through PennVest or accessible by PennVest to administer to communities in the future. They're anticipating, or at least hoping, that the funds will be appropriated to continue that grant on an annual basis. So you might hear things about the OSG grant that EPA has available. The funds, again, are allocated for this year, but we're hoping that in the future additional funds will be available.
Okay. Well, I think while we're waiting for questions, Robert, I know you said fundings can be available quickly, but what's the general timeline from the time you start the application to the time the funding is generally in hand where you could put shovels in the ground?
Certainly. Essentially, we can move as quickly as an applicant can in getting their documentation and their permits and their environmental reviews. Once you complete that administrative process and you get an approval from the board. It really comes down to how quickly you can bid your project, get bids. We do settle on the biddable documents and closing. So, I mean, we shoot for 4 or 5 months is typically the timeline it takes. But again, if a community can move faster, we're set up to move as quickly as you are. So if for some reason the project needs to be implemented for a compliance reason, you can request a letter of no prejudice from us, which allows you to get started sooner, but still preserve your right to come in after the fact and access the funding from PennVest. So that's something you'd want to talk with one of our project specialists about, and is an opportunity to access our funding when you got to move maybe a little sooner than your would be through accessing our traditional program.
Okay. We do have a question. This is what is the process for applying for the EPA OSG grant? Does it have to be part of a loan application?
Essentially, what that would be is only the states can access that grant. So the state has to apply for that grant, and then it will go into our funding. That grant does have certain criteria with it. It is for hardship considerations. So you'd have to be a distressed community, and the way you would access that funding would be through just a traditional application. All of our funding goes through our regular application process. And if it is a distressed community, does fall within those parameters, then we would potentially look at allocating those additional grant sources to offset that distressed situation within that community. And I'll qualify that we don't have grant applications and we don't have loan applications. They're essentially funding applications. Our funding is based off of the ability of a community to handle debt. And if it's harder, we calculate a target rate. We look at a lot of socioeconomic factors, median household income, and we calculate what we believe to be an affordable rate for the community. If as a result of the project, that the resulting rate is going to be higher than that affordable, then we look at offsetting the impact by applying grants to get that down to the affordable rate. If for some reason, as a result of the project, we calculate that the resulting rate is going to be lower than the affordable, then you're traditionally just going to get a funding offer with low interest loans. So it's really just applying for funding. The determination on whether grants are applied or loan are applied are really done through a financial analysis to determine if there's a hardship consideration that needs to be addressed within a community.
Okay. Great. There are more questions? We still have plenty of time for questions. Okay, Robert, do you have any other examples? Oh, here we go. Here's a question. What communities would be considered distressed or a hardship to qualify?
Certainly. Essentially, our process looks to have a user rate between 1 to 2% of the median household income. And our affordability analysis looks at median household income, percent of the population over 65, and unemployment rate, and a variety. It's like 15 socioeconomic factors. Hardship is when we calculate a rate, and I'm just going to be arbitrary. Let's say that the annual user rate, and this could be sewer or water. Well, actually, I'll MS4. I'll just go with stormwater. We believe in our analysis that a community can afford 0.25% of median household income. So that typically is going to get you a user rate that's extremely low on an annual basis. So if for some reason, as a result of the project, we calculate, and you don't have to have a user rate in place for stormwater. This is just an analysis that we do. So if we assume that a community, if they did apply fees, can afford 0.25% of median household income, Then if as a result of the project, we would anticipate the user rate being higher than that, that would be a hardship consideration, and we would start to look to apply grant funds to get down to that target rate. If for some reason, as a result of the project, we calculate a user rate, if applied, would come in under that affordable rate, then it's just going to be low interest loans. So really it surrounds that target rate that we determine as affordable by the community. And you can talk with our project specialists up front, and they can give you an idea of whether a community would qualify for grant consideration or not, and kind of get an idea of what type of funding package you might be offered should you come through PennVest for an application. So a lot of that can be determined up front, so you know, kind of eyes wide open when you're going in, what you can anticipate. Again, our grant dollars are competitive, so we never know what's going to come in from round to round. If for some reason we would have more demand for grant dollars than we have available, then we would prorate those grant dollars across all projects that are eligible for the grant funding. So we do try and get everyone a little bit of something if possible.
All right. Any more questions for Robert? So, Robert, do you have any other examples of projects? Maybe you could share some a little bit on some of the projects that you funded recently. Just give us
Oh
an
yeah.
idea of.
We've got a variety of projects. I mean, we've come from kind of full circle. We're not just wastewater and drinking water. We're doing agricultural projects, putting manure storage tanks in, heavy use areas, stream bank restorations. Actually, we have a community that's looking to come in this next round that's going to be doing a lot of stream and looking to do a lot of stream restoration as part of their MS4 pollution reduction plan, of which that's eligible when it's associated with their MS4 pollution reduction plan. We also have, you know, the traditional stormwater where you got your inlets and your pipes and you're avoiding flooding. We actually had a community that the one area of town's the low area, and the infrastructure has collapsed. It's clogged. It hasn't been maintained over the years and just deteriorated to the point where the water doesn't have any place to go, and they literally had to replace that infrastructure. And I believe it was about a $400,000 project. They came in through our small loan program, closed on the money real fast, and they're going to be implementing it relatively shortly here this summer to really address that situation. It was kind of interesting. You see the parents in the back, you know, the community in the background. I shouldn't say just parents, but a lot of neighbors sandbagging and tarping garages and things to try and keep the water out of the house, and the kids are swimming in the pool that, you know, created as a result of the flooding event in the low part of town. And as you know, maybe slightly humorous as that picture may be, it's a very real situation that people are dealing with, that, you know, our access of our funding through our small projects funding really made that funding available quickly, so that we could help get a resolution to, you know, those people that are truly being impacted in a much more timely fashion than otherwise would be achievable. So, and folks might have budgets annually and don't like to borrow money. But at the end of the day, if you got a situation within your community, you might not have to set aside $200,000 to do a project. You might have, say, a couple $1,000s every year as part of your budget. And if you finance it through PennVest, you're able to carry that debt service for 20 years, sometimes 30 years, to get that project implemented sooner. And if you get to a situation where you want to pay that off sooner, there's no penalty for, you know, prepayment to pay that debt off sooner if you like. I know some communities through their fiduciary efforts want to be fiscally responsible, and that's important. But PennVest can be part of that fiscal responsibility while addressing situations as well where you might have enough money for a debt service to get a project in and positively impact your constituency, and then, you know, pay it off later if need be or wanted, as opposed to, you know, holding off on a project for 5 years, 10 years while a situation gets worse, trying to have cash in hand. certainly low interest loan isn't free money, but I think, anytime you can get 1 to 2% interest money, it really gives you another tool that you can access to help facilitate projects in a more timely fashion within your community. So that's one of the things to talk with us about. We could, calculate out what that debt service would be, what that monthly payment would be, and really give you kind of all the information up front to really help you make the best decision you can make for the community and those that you represent.
Okay.
And one thing I'll say is we're always here. If you think of something after today's session, feel free just to pick up the phone, give me a call directly. My information's on the screen here behind me, as well as on the website, or you can look at the field area and contact one of our project specialists. And even if it's just an idea, it's never too early to contact us. And again, I will point out that we have a very healthy fund, and if we get an influx of projects that we got to come up with more money, we have the ability to do that. We aren't a leveraged program. If we got to go out and leverage our program, we can basically make more money available very quickly if need be. But right now, since 2015, we've been able to fund every project that was administratively complete and technically ready to go. So really, now's a great time to be coming to us. The funds are available, and we look forward to continuing with the mindset that we want to move forward with funding every project that comes to our doorstep. We weren't always able to do that in the past. We didn't have the funds to meet the demand, but now as the fund has grown through that revolving nature, we are in a healthy position where we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure we're funding every project that comes across our doorstep that's ready to go.
Okay. So do I have another question? Do you know of any programs that can help with upfront engineering or design costs?
We do have, I know both PennVest and USDA through Rural Utility Service. We do have a program where we can do design and engineering costs up front for where there isn't an existing entity that has user fees, or if a hardship situation exists. I know some communities, and I've just recently had two that are in that situation. They need to do the design and engineering, but they can't get local financing to cover those costs. Those costs are eligible, but typically they're reimbursed at the time the project comes to us for the construction funding. And but there are situations where there's a hardship consideration, or a local community can't access local funds for that design and engineering. And in those situations, we do allow coming to us for an application under certain criteria for that design and engineering. So that would be something to talk to our project specialists about to see if that situation qualifies for those circumstances.
All right. Give it another minute or two, see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, great questions. I appreciate the input, or not the input, but the questions, because these are the questions we typically get asked, and I find that there's always new people being involved with communities, and the more we can get the knowledge out there, the better.
Okay. So do you have any more tips or encouragement for types of projects to apply for, or what to put in the application? Any particular key things you're looking for? Or just
Well, really, it's any clean water project. If it has a way to improve the water quality within your community, whether it be MS4, drinking water, wastewater, non-point source, stormwater, anything that can improve water quality or the management of water within your community, is typically an eligible activity. If you come up with something unique or different, we're not looking for reasons to say no. As a previous slide I showed, where we had a lot of drinking water, wastewater, but you saw the numbers increasing for those other types of projects, is really our effort to expand the program, recognizing that there's other ways that aren't maybe considered traditional So we're always looking for new opportunities. We've done a couple different types of unique situations. We did a land swap in a project where wetland was preserved that took some erodible soils out of farm production, and they basically did a swap there in Armstrong Township in Lycoming County. They were able to preserve a wetland. The farmer got some better soil to actually farm while giving up some erodible soils. It was an even swap. And as a result, water quality improved. That's kind of a unique situation folks might not think of. And there might be opportunities within your community where you're partnering with a commercial entity or a private entity to put practices on their property for the benefit of the community for your MS4 practices. And so we're always looking for those new and interesting ways of doing it. We don't keep our feet in concrete and just, it has to fit our program. If there's a way to do it, we're going to work with you to find a way to do it and really look forward. Actually, those kind of opportunities keep things interesting, but we're always looking for ways to expand our program to come up with new and unique ideas, recognizing that really every project's unique to a community. No two projects are 100% the same. So by all means, if you have a wild and crazy idea, don't think that you can't suggest it to us. If there's a way to do it and there is a water quality benefit, we're going to want to work with you to find a way to make it happen. And that might just be with PennVest. It might be working with other cooperating agencies. Or other entities. We work very well with, we've had projects where we've worked with conservation districts and RUS, or Natural Resource Conservation Service, and have been able to bring projects to fruition through multi-agency work, leveraging the strengths and benefits of each of our programs to help a project be successful. So we're very easy to work and flexible in those regards. So again, we're looking to make projects successful, not necessarily making projects fit a predefined mold.
Okay. Well, I think we have time for one or two more questions, if there's any more. So it says, how do you make changes during construction?
We do have a process where for unforeseen circumstances, if you're in the middle of a project, sometimes things do arise where changes are needed. We do have a change order process where you can request approval through PennVest and Department of Environmental Protection. They're kind of our provide technical reviews of our projects. And if you do have those unforeseen circumstances, site conditions, subsurface site conditions, suddenly you're dealing with utilities that weren't previously identified. That happens sometimes, and you got to do a change order. We can make change orders mid-stride within a project to facilitate those changes. Again, we're looking to make a project successful, not reasons to see it fail. And we have a process set up where we can make sure that the change you're proposing still qualifies, that it's going to address the situation. We'll look at it from a technical view. We'll look at it from a financial review. We do allow contingency within our projects up to a certain percentage for these very reasons and these situations, so that as these changes arise, there is some buffer within your financial budget to accommodate those changes, recognizing that sometimes that does arise and that does occur. So we've built the program to be as flexible as possible in those situations.
Okay. Well, we're almost to the end of our time. I think we do have time for one more quick question, if there's any others. If not, then thank you, Robert, for a great presentation and a good discussion. So the next session will start at 9:25. It's on the Pennsylvania DEP procedures and regulations for MS4 mapping, pollution reduction plans, and joint pollution reduction plan multiple BMP case studies. So I think it's a video, but that will start at 9:25. So again, it's best to, if you leave this session, go back to your agenda and click on that link to enter that session. So thank you again, Robert. And
All right. Thank you, everyone.
we'll see you all in the next session.